There is something about you that most people cannot explain. You walk into a room, and before anyone speaks, you already feel the tension. You sense hidden resentment behind a smile. You recognize pain in someone's eyes before they admit they're hurting. You notice manipulation before anyone else realizes it's happening. And because of that, you've probably spent your entire life feeling like you don't belong. People call you too sensitive. They tell you you're overthinking. They laugh when you say you have a feeling about someone. But later, you turn out to be right. Again. And again. Here's the question. What if your sensitivity isn't a weakness? What if it's the rarest psychological gift a human being can possess? And what if that gift becomes dangerous the moment the wrong people discover you have it? Stay with me until the end. Because one idea from Carl Jung may completely change the way you understand yourself forever. But first, if you're fascinated by psychology, philosophy, and the hidden truths about human nature, subscribe now. This channel explores the timeless wisdom of thinkers like Jung, Stoicism, and other great minds to help you understand people, and yourself, on a much deeper level. Now, let's begin. Imagine living in a world where everyone hears words, but you hear emotions. Where everyone notices actions, but you notice intentions. Where everyone watches faces, but you read souls. That is the strange burden of the solitary empath. Not everyone who spends time alone is an empath. And not every empath becomes solitary. But when both qualities exist in the same person, something extraordinary begins to happen. Carl Jung believed that beneath our conscious mind lies a vast unconscious world, a place filled with symbols, instincts, fears, and truths that shape our behavior without us realizing it. Most people never become aware of this hidden landscape. They spend their lives reacting automatically, chasing approval, avoiding discomfort, and wearing masks to fit into society. But the solitary empath begins to notice those masks. Without trying. Without asking. Almost instinctively. You can feel when someone is pretending to be kind. You sense when confidence is only insecurity wearing expensive clothes. You recognize loneliness hiding behind endless laughter. You don't simply observe people. You absorb them. And that's where your greatest gift becomes your greatest danger. Because most people don't enjoy being truly seen. Think about that for a moment. People often say they want honesty. But what they really want is comfort. They say they want authenticity. But many become uncomfortable the moment someone quietly recognizes who they really are. Have you ever noticed that certain people seem strangely uncomfortable around you? Even though you've done absolutely nothing? You barely speak. You don't judge them. Yet they become defensive. Why? Because some people sense, without fully understanding, that you notice things they'd rather keep hidden. Carl Jung once wrote that everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. But here's what he also understood. Most people spend their entire lives running away from that understanding. And when someone unintentionally reflects their hidden self, they often reject the mirror instead of facing the truth. That mirror may be you. Which raises an uncomfortable question. If your greatest strength is seeing beneath the surface, why should you ever hide it? The answer isn't what most people expect. And it has nothing to do with fear. It has everything to do with wisdom. Because throughout history, those who could truly read human nature were rarely celebrated. They were misunderstood. Sometimes isolated. Sometimes envied. And often attacked. The more accurately you understand people, the more carefully you must choose who understands you. Because not everyone deserves access to your perception. Not everyone deserves access to your peace. And not everyone deserves access to your heart. The solitary empath eventually learns a painful lesson. Silence often protects what explanation never can. But this is only the beginning. Because there's one hidden psychological ability that almost every solitary empath possesses. An ability so powerful that it can transform relationships, expose manipulation, and even predict human behavior before it unfolds. Most people never realize they have it. Until it's almost too late. Let's explore that next. Here's the truth that few people ever talk about. The greatest gift of the solitary empath isn't kindness. It isn't compassion. And it isn't simply feeling deeply. It's pattern recognition. While others focus on what happened, you quietly notice what keeps happening. You don't judge people by one conversation. You watch the small inconsistencies, the subtle pauses, the repeated excuses, the smile that never reaches the eyes, the apology that changes nothing. And before long, you begin to see a pattern that everyone else misses. This isn't magic. It's observation sharpened by solitude. Carl Jung believed that much of human behavior is driven by unconscious patterns. Most people think they're making free choices, yet they're often repeating the same emotional cycles without realizing it. The solitary empath notices those cycles. Not because they are smarter than everyone else, but because they pay attention when everyone else is distracted. Think about your own life. Have you ever met someone who seemed charming at first? Everyone loved them. Everyone trusted them. Yet something inside you whispered, "Be careful." You couldn't explain it. There was no proof. No obvious red flag. Just a quiet feeling. Weeks later, months later, that person's true character finally appeared. Suddenly everyone else saw what you had sensed from the beginning. Have you experienced that before? If you have, you're not alone. But here's the mistake many empaths make. When they recognize these patterns, they rush to warn everyone. They believe truth alone will protect people. Unfortunately, human beings rarely accept a truth they're not emotionally ready to hear. Instead of thanking you, they question you. They defend the very person who will later betray them. And somehow, you become the problem. This is where Stoic wisdom becomes essential. The Stoics understood that wisdom isn't just knowing the truth. It's knowing when to speak, how to speak, and sometimes, when to remain completely silent. Silence is not weakness. Silence is discipline. Because every truth doesn't need an audience. Imagine carrying a priceless jewel. Would you display it to every stranger you meet? Of course not. Then why expose your deepest perception to people who haven't earned your trust? Your intuition is valuable. Protect it. Because manipulative people learn quickly. The moment they realize you can see through them, they don't usually become honest. They become more strategic. They begin wearing better masks. They flatter you. They mirror your personality. They study your weaknesses. Not because they admire you, but because they fear what you might uncover. This is why some of the most emotionally intelligent people eventually become quiet. Not cold. Not arrogant. Just careful. They stop explaining themselves to everyone. They stop trying to convince people. They simply observe. And observation becomes their greatest strength. But there's another side to this gift. One that's far more dangerous. Because constantly absorbing other people's emotions comes with a hidden price. A price many solitary empaths pay without even realizing it. And unless you recognize it, your greatest gift can slowly become the very thing that drains your life away. That's where we'll go next. But every extraordinary gift comes with a price. For the solitary empath, that price is rarely visible. People see you smiling. They think you're calm. They assume you're simply quiet. What they don't see is the emotional storm taking place beneath the surface. You don't just hear someone's words. You carry their disappointment. You don't simply witness anger. You absorb its weight. You don't only comfort people. You often leave the conversation feeling as if their pain has become your own. At first, it feels like compassion. Over time, it becomes exhaustion. This is why so many solitary empaths disappear for days. Not because they hate people, but because their soul is trying to recover. Have you ever spent just one afternoon with a group of people, only to come home feeling completely drained? Nothing dramatic happened. No arguments. No conflict. Yet you felt as though every ounce of energy had been taken from you. That isn't always because people intended to hurt you. It's because you were carrying emotional burdens that never belonged to you. Here's where Carl Jung offers a powerful insight. He believed that psychological growth requires us to distinguish between what belongs to us and what belongs to others. Most people never make that distinction. They carry guilt that isn't theirs. They carry expectations they never chose. They carry emotional responsibilities that no one asked them to bear. And slowly, they forget who they really are. The solitary empath is especially vulnerable to this trap, because your heart naturally wants to help. When someone cries, you feel compelled to fix it. When someone struggles, you immediately look for a solution. When someone feels abandoned, you instinctively move closer. But here's the difficult lesson. Not every battle is yours to fight. Not every wound is yours to heal. And not every broken person wants to become whole. Read that again in your mind. Some people don't seek healing. They seek someone willing to carry their pain while they avoid changing. That realization hurts. Because it challenges everything your compassionate heart wants to believe. There's an old story that captures this perfectly. A traveler found a wounded bird on the side of the road. He gently picked it up, cared for it, fed it, and protected it. Weeks passed. The bird grew stronger. Then one morning, it flew away without looking back. The traveler felt betrayed. But an old man watching nearby smiled and said, "You were never meant to own what you healed." Think about that. Sometimes the greatest act of love is helping without expecting to be needed forever. Yet many empaths build their identity around being indispensable. They become the listener, the rescuer, the therapist, the one everyone calls at midnight. Until one day, they realize no one ever asks, "How are you?" They've become everyone's safe place, while having nowhere safe themselves. If that resonates with you, pause for a moment. Because this may be the wake-up call you've needed. Your value does not come from sacrificing yourself. Your worth is not measured by how much pain you can carry. And protecting your peace is not selfish. It is wisdom. The Stoics understood this centuries ago. You cannot pour from an empty cup. You cannot guide others if you've lost your own direction. And you cannot become the person you were meant to be if you're constantly living inside everyone else's emotions. This is why solitude is not an escape. For the solitary empath, solitude is medicine. It's where the noise fades, where borrowed emotions disappear, where your own voice finally becomes clear again. But something remarkable begins to happen after enough time in solitude. You start noticing a different kind of truth. Not about other people, but about yourself. And that discovery changes everything. Because hidden beneath your sensitivity lies a power that most people spend their entire lives searching for. The courage to meet your own shadow. And once that journey begins, you can never see yourself, or the world, the same way again. This is the moment where the journey changes. Until now, you've been looking outward, reading people, sensing emotions, recognizing hidden intentions. But Carl Jung believed that the greatest mystery is not the minds of others. It's the unexplored depths of your own. He called it the shadow. The shadow is the part of yourself you were taught to hide. The anger you buried because you were told it was wrong. The ambition you silenced because you didn't want to seem arrogant. The confidence you suppressed because someone once called you too much. The loneliness you disguised behind kindness. The grief you never allowed yourself to feel. Every emotion rejected by your conscious mind doesn't disappear. It waits. Quietly. Influencing your choices from behind the curtain. And here's what makes the solitary empath different. Because you're so skilled at understanding others, you can spend years avoiding yourself. You become the listener instead of the speaker. The helper instead of the healer. The observer instead of the participant in your own life. It's a subtle trap. You know everyone else's story, but you've never finished writing your own. Ask yourself something uncomfortable. When was the last time you sat alone? With no phone, No music. No distractions. Just your own thoughts? For many people, silence feels peaceful. For others, silence feels terrifying. Why? Because silence removes every distraction between you and your shadow. Jung believed that what we refuse to face within ourselves often appears in the people around us. The arrogance you despise. The dishonesty that frustrates you. The need for approval that annoys you. Sometimes these reactions reveal something unresolved inside you. Not always, but often enough to change your life if you're willing to look honestly. This isn't about blaming yourself. It's about reclaiming yourself. Because every hidden part you accept becomes a source of strength instead of a source of fear. Imagine a lighthouse during a violent storm. The waves crash. The wind screams. Darkness covers the sea. But the lighthouse doesn't fight the storm. It simply stands. Its light remains steady. That is what inner integration looks like. You stop reacting to every emotional wave around you. You stop chasing everyone's approval. You stop shrinking yourself to make other people comfortable. Instead, you become anchored. Calm. Clear. Unshakable. And here's the paradox. The more comfortable you become with your own shadow, the less power manipulative people have over you. Because manipulation depends on your unhealed wounds. If you fear rejection, they'll threaten to leave. If you crave validation, they'll give it, then take it away. If you need everyone to like you, they'll control you with approval. But once you face those wounds, their weapons lose their power. This is why true strength isn't loud. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't need to dominate the room. It simply cannot be controlled. The Stoics understood this deeply. They taught that the strongest person isn't the one who conquers others. It's the one who conquers themselves. That doesn't happen overnight. It happens every time you choose truth over comfort. Every time you set a boundary without guilt. Every time you say no without explaining. Every time you walk away from what drains your spirit. Little by little, you stop becoming the person the world expected. And you become the person you were always meant to be. But there's one final lesson. Perhaps the most important of all. Because once you awaken to this gift, you'll face a decision that determines the rest of your life. Will you continue giving your energy to everyone? Or will you finally learn the sacred art of protecting it? That answer changes everything. There comes a moment in every solitary empath's life when everything changes. Not because the world becomes kinder. Not because people suddenly understand you. But because you stop asking them to. That is the beginning of freedom. For years you may have believed your purpose was to save everyone. To heal every broken heart. To explain yourself until people finally understood your intentions. To carry burdens that were never yours. But wisdom whispers something different. Your gift was never meant to make you a martyr. It was meant to make you awake. Carl Jung believed that the highest goal of life is individuation, the lifelong process of becoming your authentic self rather than the person the world expects you to be. That journey isn't easy. It requires walking away from relationships that drain your soul. It requires disappointing people who benefited from your lack of boundaries. It requires accepting that not everyone will understand your silence. And that's okay. Because peace is more valuable than constant approval. Think of a tree deep in the forest. It doesn't chase anyone. It doesn't beg to be admired. It simply grows. Its roots sink deeper with every storm. Its branches stretch higher with every season. And because it stands firmly in its own nature, it becomes a place of shelter for others. Not by sacrificing itself, but by remaining true to itself. That is your lesson. You don't become powerful by giving away every piece of yourself. You become powerful by learning what deserves your energy, and what doesn't. From this day forward, remember these truths. You do not need to explain your intuition to people committed to misunderstanding you. You do not need to rescue those who refuse to rescue themselves. You do not need to shrink your sensitivity to make emotionally unaware people comfortable. And you do not need permission to protect your peace. The world will always contain noise. manipulation, distraction, conflict. But none of those things have to live inside you. The solitary empath's greatest strength isn't the ability to feel everything. It's the wisdom to choose what is worthy of being felt. That's what transforms sensitivity into strength. That's what turns solitude into confidence. That's what turns awareness into wisdom. Perhaps you've spent years believing there was something wrong with you. That you were too quiet, too observant, too emotional, too different. Maybe you were never too much. Maybe you were simply surrounded by people who couldn't recognize the value of what you carried. Your sensitivity is not your prison. It is your compass. Your solitude is not your punishment. It is your classroom. Your intuition is not a curse. It is one of the greatest gifts you will ever possess, if you learn to protect it. So don't hide because you're afraid. Hide your gift because not every eye deserves to see it. Not every hand deserves to touch it. And not every heart deserves access to it. Protect it. Refine it. Honor it. And let your life, not your words, reveal its power. Because in a world that constantly demands your attention, the rarest form of strength is mastering your own. If this message resonated with you, don't keep it to yourself. Leave a comment below with just one word. Awakened. Let's see how many solitary empaths are quietly watching from around the world. If you enjoyed this journey into the wisdom inspired by Carl Jung, Stoicism, and the psychology of human nature, subscribe and turn on notifications. Every week, we explore timeless ideas that help you understand yourself, master your emotions, and see the world through a deeper lens. And if you're ready to continue this path of self-discovery, watch the next video on your screen now. The 7 Signs You've Outgrown Everyone Around You, Carl Jung. What you learn there may explain the final piece of the puzzle you've been searching for. Until then, guard your peace. Trust your intuition. And never stop becoming who you truly are.